We're pleased to be a part of this conversation, and it's a very serious and weighty conversation for those of us in public service. Myself, I'm a hydrologist and a soils guy, so I am keenly interested in our water resources, those lakes that we heard about, 11,854 of them that are greater than 10 acres in size and 5 feet in average depth. Those are what we have in Minnesota. We're unique in the upper part of our continent. We provide water to 3 major basins: the Red River of the north that flows into Hudson Bay, the Great Lakes, obviously, that goes out through the St. Lawrence Seaway, and then the Great Mississippi River watershed, which takes about 2/3 of our state's drainage. 98% of the water that leaves our state falls on our state. So we don't look upstream to almost anyone. 2% of our water comes from somewhere else. The rest of the water that leaves Minnesota is our water. So it is our responsibility to do right by those of us citizens downstream. And it's very difficult to unmake a decision once you've made it. Some decisions can be unmade, like what we're having for dinner tonight, or what we're going to do next weekend. But things like pipelines and community development and big, weighty economic decisions don't get unmade easily. We have urged the Public Utilities Commission. If you're not familiar with the Public Utilities Commission, they are the entity that makes the decisions on corridors and pipelines and transmission routes through the state of Minnesota. The Public Utilities Commission is separate from the legislature, separate from the executive branch of government. They are members who are appointed by the governor, and they have staggered terms so that there's a carryover from one administration to another. And the Public Utilities Commission is the one who has the responsibility to determine if there is in fact a need for a pipeline, for a transmission line of electricity, and those sorts of new power production facilities in the state. And they also have the responsibility for selecting the routes and doing the environmental review process that goes along with those routes. So we raised a number of questions to the Public Utilities Commission that we want them to seriously consider. One of them is not, don't build a pipeline. That's not what Minnesota gets to say in this process, other than because of the Constitution of the United States that says where there are interstate commerce issues, it is not up to a state to make an individual decision. But the Public Utilities Commission does evaluate whether there's a need for the pipeline at this time, and they do then evaluate the route and alignment. So we said, take it seriously, ask a lot of hard questions about a variety of alternatives, because once the decision gets made, we can't look back and say, I wish we had thought about this, I wish we had thought about that. So we did raise a number of questions, particularly about sensitive water resources. We do agree that there are particularly unique and rare water resources in this part of the state, certainly across the company's proposed route, that if they were to be contaminated would take a very long time to remediate. So the potential impacts that we raised were sensitive environmental areas. We also talked about the spill and response risk that cannot be very easily mitigated when assets and access to the pipeline could not be easily accessed from roads or other existing corridors of transportation. We also said that there are very uncertain ecological and human health risks that need to be evaluated. While we know what's in oil, we don't know what's always in the mixtures that go along with the oil, that travel with that product in pipelines and on trains. We've raised this question in all the hearings and meetings that Governor Dayton has sponsored across the state, listening to first responders about. It's very challenging to understand the chemical complexities of what's in products that are being moved by rail, and similarly by pipeline. And we're not sure about the ecological fate and the human health consequences of some of those products. So we've also, as I said, raised a number of concerns about the routes and the alternative alignments that should be considered. We think that it is oversimplifying to say that pipelines replace rail shipments. The expected growth out of oil production in Canada and the Bakken Formation makes it certain that we will have transport by rail and pipeline well into our future. That's not something we expect will go down. In fact, the estimates of production for the Bakken are that maybe 1/3 of that production could move by pipeline or by train, and the other 2/3 could move by pipeline someday. But for the current scenario, even if every pipeline that's proposed today were to be built, it would reduce the flow on the rails by only about 40%. So there's still a significant challenge of trying to meet the demand for movement of oil by pipeline construction. So as I said, saying the two are substitutable, rail versus pipelines, is an oversimplification. It's like we'll have both. People are frustrated. People are frustrated primarily because they want a decision. If you're interested in building a pipeline and making sure that we have a more reliable and secure energy future in this country, people are also frustrated that they're not being heard. We've heard that repeatedly as we've traveled around the state listening to people on rail safety concerns. And the governor is very interested in making sure that we have meaningful citizen involvement and input into every decision that's made that has a governmental duty to it. Lastly, I just wanted to make sure that I said the climate question is not unresolved, or is not settled in my mind. Because to say that a pipeline is not a part of a climate impact is, again, ruling out the discussion that the volume of production that's moving through that pipeline is directly attributable to greenhouse gas emissions at the production site, at the processing facilities, at the transfer locations along the pipelines, along those corridors, and when we use the product on the other end. I've always said it's important that we ask the question, what are the climate impacts of continuing down the same path of producing oil and natural resources from the earth as quickly as possible? Let's make it clear what the impacts are. Let's get that information in front of the public so they can understand and have their questions answered. Then we can have a more meaningful discussion. Thank you.